Good morning. Today we are moving into a new unit on graphing. Instead of using a table, we're going to use what's called slope, intercept, form. And the name says it all. We're using our slopes and our y-intercepts in order to graph. So what that looks like, we have this equation, y equals mx plus b. This equation is on a poster on the wall in the classroom. It tells you that our m represents our slope, which we already know, and our slope we can find by counting rise over run from a graph. And it is always in our equation going to be in front of the x as long as our equation is solved for y, or in function form. So our slope is always going to be in front of the x, and then our b is what we call our y-intercept, where we're crossing the y-axis, this line, the y-axis. And that number is either added or subtracted onto the end of your graph, or on the end of your equation. So if we were to graph this, we'll get to that later, b tells us where to begin our graph on the y-axis. This one says start at up 1 from the origin. Here's the origin. We're starting at up 1. And our slope tells us how to move, how many to go up and down, and then left to right. This one's already kind of outlined here for us. Our slope rising 1, they already went up 1, and then over 1, 2, 3, and they put a point. We could keep going, go up 1, over 1, 2, 3, and put a point there as well. Those points help us to create our line. So we will get to the graphing later, but for now we're just going to identify m and b in our equation. So if we look over here, this is already in the form y equals mx plus b. M is our slope, so if you want to write slope here you can. B is our y-intercept. I'm just going to write y-int for intercept. So our slope is always in front of the x. Right here it's a 3. But we always want to write slope as a fraction, rise over run, so we can make this a fraction 3 over 1. And then b, where we begin, would be this one at a positive 4. That's all we're looking for. This one is also in the form y equals mx plus b. So our m in front of our x right here is the number negative 1/4. I just put the negative on the top. And then b, where we're beginning our graph, right here should be a 3. This next one's a little bit different though because y is not all by itself like it was in the other ones. So we actually have to solve this for y. So leave the y here, we need to move this 3x. It's a positive, so the opposite of adding 3x would be subtracting 3x. So 3 minus 3 is 0, those eliminate. So we have y equals, and your x's come first, a negative 3x, and then plus 2. Now this is in the form y equals mx plus b. So our m in front of our x, if you look at your equation, if you want to write it out, you can. M is negative 3. As a fraction, you can put it over 1. And then b, this graph begins at 2. This next one looks also a little confusing, but if we write out our equation, y equals mx plus b, it will help us. So our m in front of our x right here is a negative 5. As a fraction, slope is always a fraction, 5 over 1. And then b, there's nothing added, so we can assume it's a 0. We don't write plus 0, so that's why we know there's nothing there. We would begin at 0 or at the origin on this graph. So let's identify m and b and then graph. It says graph the line that has a y-intercept of negative 1 and a slope of 2/3. So our y-intercept, if you look at our equation, our y-intercept is where we're beginning our graph. So that's going to be b, where we begin on our y-axis. And then our slope tells me how to count rise over run, and we know that's m. So first, I'm going to start with b. b tells me right here negative 1. So down 1. If you want to write out b equals -1, you can, and then m equals 2/3, you can do that as well. So I am begin at -1, and then m is how I move, rise over run. So rise over run from this point now, from the middle now, from the point, rise 2 and run 1, 2, 3, and put a point there. Then rise 2 and run 1, 2, 3, put a point there. Now, you don't need to do these little extra lines. I'm just showing you how we got to our point. All I want to see is the points. So rise 2, run 3. Instead of going up and right, we can also go down and left. Instead of going up 2, we can go down 2. Instead of going to the right, we can go to the left to continue our straight line in the opposite direction. Down 2, over 3. And then always draw your line through and put arrows on the end to show that your line could continue in both directions. Let's try the next one. It says graph the line that has a y-intercept of 4. So b is 4. And then a slope of -2. Our slope is the letter m, which is -2. Slope is always a fraction though, rise over run, so I'm going to put it over 1. So b tells me where to begin on my y-axis. It says begin at 4, so positive 4 is up 1, 2, 3, 4 right here. And then my slope tells me how to move. -2, instead of going up, it would really be going down 2, 1, 2, and then positive 1 is to the right. Rise up and down and over run. This is our elevator. If you get in our elevator again, go down 2 and over 1, down 2, over 1. We can continue this until we get to the other side of the graph, down 2, over 1. It should form a nice straight line. We went down and right. We can also do the opposite and go up and left. Up 2, 1 to the left. And draw our line through. And put arrows on both ends. Flip on over. Next, graph the line that has a y-intercept of 6. So on my y-axis, that's where we're going to begin. We're going to begin at 6. And then our slope is already a fraction. Our m is going to be 3 over 5. So let's begin at 6. I'm just going to write the word there in case you forget. Up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then our slope is rise over run, rising 3, and 1 to the right. Now this one's tricky. From here I can't go up and to the right, so the opposite I just have to do is down and to the left. So down 3, 1, 2, 3, and to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the only point that's going to fit. You really only need 2 points to create a line. So draw your line through it, put arrows on the ends. Double check. This was a positive slope. They're both positives. If you were walking across this, you would be walking uphill. We know it's right. Alright, this one, our y-intercept is 0, so we're beginning on the y-axis at 0. And our slope, our m, is -1/3. I just always put the negative with the top number. So beginning at 0, that's right in the middle, we call that the origin. And then how are we moving? First, -1, that's down, and +3 is to the right. So down 1, and 1, 2, 3 to the right. Down 1, 1, 2, 3 to the right. Or the opposite would be, instead of down and right, we could go up 1 and to the left. So up 1, 3 to the left, up 1, 3 to the left, and draw your line through it. Put arrows on the ends. Our last two problems we don't have to graph. They already graphed it for us. They want us to identify our slope, which is the letter M, and then our y-intercept, which is the letter B, of the graph that's shown. I would suggest starting with B. Where does your graph begin? And then, how do you move? So on my y-axis is where we always begin. We began on my y-axis at this point, which is down 1, 2, 3. So we began at -3. And then you can pick any 2 points to find your slope. I'm going to use this one since it's already there, and this one. So how we move, remember, it's counting rise over run. So up and down, and then left to right. So I'm going up 1, 2, and then running 1, 2, 3. Double check, this is positive, this is also positive. If you instead picked these 2 points, that's fine. We're still going up 2 and over 3. Up 2 over 3. If you picked 2 points that were further away from each other, like if you picked this point and this point, we would be rising 1, 2, 3, 4, and over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You would just have to divide, and you would get the same answer that we did. Alright, last one, identifying M and B. M is how we move, B is where we begin. I'm going to start with where we begin on our y-axis. Well, here's where our line crosses the y-axis. So this is 0, we're at 1, 2, we're beginning at 2. And our slope from one point to the next, doesn't matter which ones you pick. I'm getting in my elevator and moving down first, 1, 2, 3, 4, I went down 4. Get out of my elevator, walk over 1. If you went the other direction, rise 1, 2, 3, 4. Going to the left would be -1. These are the same answers. That is it. Good luck identifying M and B and graphing on your homework.